All right, this is a Facebook post yesterday, and I'll let you see there that I created this meme, and it says, I put electricity on my doorknob during a home invasion, and a young attorney dies of surprise heart failure on the same day. Okay, and then I had a short read at the top up here that I wrote on there, and this is not the email to the sheriff, but it's based on evidence found. I've long suspected that attorney Landman Matt Hyman died inside my home 2 weeks before the murder attempt during another home invasion. This may have been the motive for murder 2 weeks later. I remember my attorney telling me there isn't a lawyer in this town that's going to help you. And I wonder, why is that? I was the clear victim of these criminals who have been rigging homes and murdered one homeowner after another and using corrupt police. But what if the reason was that an attorney had died inside my home during one of them home invasions? Maybe Matt Hyman and some of his friends were in the $1 million underground home where Gary Painter, our last sheriff, that was alleged to be in the home by the sheriff candidate Joe Lozano, maybe was in the. Painter used to hang out when they decided to sneak into my home from the now removed trapdoor in my utility room from where I was shot. And question: just imagine to look on his friend's face when they saw him grab my bedroom doorknob and get electrocuted. And I've told that story before. I put electricity on that doorknob. You wouldn't see it if you were on the outside of my home. Actually, not on the outside of my home, on the outside of my door in my hallway. That wasn't an outside door. That was an inside door. Okay, that was my bedroom door. I building a safe room to try to save my life. And I think it did. I'm sure they knew that if they called 911 to save Matt's life, then they would go to prison for the burglary of habitation, which is a felony, and them crimes have gone on over and over and over. And it's like they've been allowed by these corrupt police. And but if they called 911 to save life, then they'd go to prison for burglary of habitation, and it would expose the underground homes, the $1 million underground homes, and the parties, the wholesale parties, the murder of the little girl, the murder of the last homeowner. Right? It looks like they chose to let their friend die to keep them from getting busted for their crimes. I just wrote the sheriff and some other law enforcement about this theory, which I believe we'll find out is right. And so that's what I'm saying. This is the short read here. That let's say Matt was in my hallway that day. Somebody was here trying to come in my room. That's a fact. Okay, I know somebody was here, and I know I put electricity on the doorknob, and I know that door wasn't breached. Okay, and so I went back looking to see if somebody actually died, and that's where I found this young 33-year-old landman that died of a surprise heart failure. But the thing is what I'm saying is a lot of times electricity stops the heart. If you call 911 and they have the defibrillator, electricity restarts the heart. They can save a person's life many times if the help is on the way and they get that heart restarted. But I'm speculating that his friends chose to let their friend die instead of calling for help, because they would have been busted, because they're in a private home, breaking into a private home in the commission of a felony. Okay, and here I copied and pasted this. This went to our new Sheriff Kreiner, and who I've been in contact with about the crimes here. And like I said, I figure either he's building his case, him and the investigative team are building their case, and they're soon going to make arrests, or they're covering up, they're obstructing justice and covering up multiple murders. That's the way I look at it, And so, the jury is still out there, but let's pray that Sheriff Kreiner is a good man, and he's trying to clean up this massive corruption we have here in Midland. Okay, so Sheriff Kreiner, today I want to tell you about a possible motive for murder and maybe another death connected to the many crimes here. After repeated break-ins to my home and reporting this several times, I finally figured out how to stop these criminals that were sneaking into my home, stealing services from me, and threatening my life. I found this product online called Clear Out, which is tear gas in a canister used to clear out enclosed spaces. The ex-wife and I used this together one day, but I don't think anybody was here when we set off the 2 canisters. We were coughing, our eyes were watering, as it's very powerful stuff. After we separated, I was determined to end these crimes and clear my name. I go to bed one night and waited until I thought the burglars were asleep, and then I get up and run to the other side of my home and kill the breakers to the entire home. I was wanting to put them in the dark, and I knew they were still in my electricity for light. I then quickly set off 3 cans of tear gas that I'd already had ready. They had tubes on them, which I had pushed up through the ceiling. Okay. Now, keep in mind, this is 2 weeks before I'm shot. Or so, 2.5 weeks. I could hear them scrambling around in a panic as if they were not trying to be quiet. I got them good that night, and the next day when I got home from work, I hear a person in my attic coughing. I knew at the time how to stop these criminals that were breaking in my home, stealing from me, and threatening my life, and I didn't need a gun. All I had to do was go from 3 cans to 10 cans, but I don't want to kill anybody. I never tear gas the attic again. I want the police to arrest the criminals so I can live in peace. A few days later, on January 14, 2012, which was 2 weeks before I was ambushed and shot in a premeditated capital attempted murder. Why premeditated? Because they had to load their guns and drive from their home to my home to shoot me. Okay? And then this is something I post on Facebook often. Did the person under my home, were they any danger at all? Could they have not left out of the same tunnel they got here? Absolutely. They chose to stay and shoot me. They tried to kill me. Okay? It was absolutely 100% premeditated. Okay? And so, attempted capital because it's done during the commission of a felony. The felony was burglary habitation. I recognized that somebody was trying to come into my bedroom. I was concerned about retribution because of the tear gas, and I've called this the first murder attempt. Okay. Since I've already suspected they killed the guy that lived here before me, I was concerned they were going to kick in my bedroom door and kill me. I had found proof of the back door of this home being kicked in during the month that the previous homeowner, Michael Hahn, died. I got this idea to build a safe room by putting electricity on my doorknob. Keep in mind, this is an inside door, and my outside doors were bolted shut. They didn't come in my home from the outside doors. The people in my hallway who were trying to come into my bedroom had obviously come in from the now removed hidden trapdoor that the ex-wife had told me about, which is also where I was ambushed and shot from 2 weeks later. The evidence shows where I was shot from. And based on the police report and security cameras, it's how MPD officers Davis, Dickey, Chatwell, Angel, and Hale entered my home after I crawled out. Remember, Dickey was in my home at 11:05, and he wasn't seen arriving on the camera that Woodward and Naylor was seen arriving on. A couple of days after this very long and scary night, the ex-wife comes to my home and says in a smart tone of voice, "Hey, you sleeping?" It was clear by her question that she knew about that night of terror. This is when she brings me back my life insurance books that I didn't know she had taken. They showed that I had an accidental death policy which would add $500,000 if my murder was ruled an accident by her lifelong friend, MPD Detective Rosa Rodriguez. She also gives me signed divorce papers to file, which really meant nothing since they were not final. My sister-in-law, Mitzi Webb, later told me that she saw these life insurance books during this 2 or 3 week time period, but how or why, I don't know. I suspected she brought them back by plan so she wouldn't have possession of those books when my murder was ruled an accident. After I shot, I checked the obituaries to see if someone had died on this day, January 14, 2012, and I see where a landman attorney named Matt Hyman did. He was only 33 years old. Landman is who I could see being involved in the oil show parties and the forced prostitution. Remember the young girl at the 2010 oil show party that was murdered because she refused to prostitute? Okay. Matt's former sister-in-law, Natalie Sherry Hyman, happened to be my nurse, so I asked her some questions on Facebook which might eliminate him as being a suspect for dying in my home that night. I asked her how he died, knowing that if it was a car accident, then it wasn't him. She tells me that he died of a surprise heart failure that nobody knew he had. Electricity stops the heart. I asked her when he died, because if he died that morning, it wasn't him, but he died at the same time I had electricity on my doorknob. This just furthered this theory. The only witness to his death was his wife, Leslie Hyman, who went on to marry Matt's friend, Brian Hillman. Brian was also a landman who threatened me when I asked on Facebook if Matt died in my home. He didn't want me asking questions and threatened to sue me. At the same time, another friend of Matt Hyman named Chris Mertz also threatened me in a more subtle way. I knew him as he used to work for my company of 28 years, DCP Midstream. Chris was also a landman, but we called them right-of-way agents. Our right-of-way agents reported to the commercial group, and the director at the time was a guy named Ken Slager. Ken Slager lived across the street from my home before I moved to Midland, and I've long suspected that he knew about the underground oil show parties going on in the backyard. Neither of them work for DCP now, and I suspected my company did some cleanup after the murder attempt on my life. His group took care of our booth at the oil show, okay? And that was Ken Slager's group. Okay, so let's say that Matt Hyman and his friends came to my home from the Trapdoor to kill me, as I was a real problem for them since I was tear gassing the attic and calling law enforcement about the crimes here. But then Matt grabs my doorknob and gets electrocuted. His friends with him then have a choice. They can either call for help and possibly save their friend's life, but that would result in them being busted. Or and they would be charged with his death since they were all breaking into a private home when he died. This told me that Matt's friends let him die. It also makes sense they would be upset and maybe even trying to blame me, the innocent homeowner that is trying to live in peace. So revenge may be the motive for murder. I have no proof that Matt died here, but I feel real strong about it, and I know that a real investigator can find that out by talking to Leslie, Brian, Chris, or maybe even Ken. I suspect that most of the people in this large crime ring know about it too. A contract landman that also worked for my company, which I didn't name publicly, told me that she went to a funeral around the same time for a guy that got electrocuted. She was one of the people, besides my friend, that I suspected was at the old show party when the young girl was murdered, because I overheard her ask what time she got home. At the emergency room a few minutes after I shot, I was telling MPD Detective Rosa Rodriguez that I had tie-wired my spare door shut, and she says in a smart tone of voice, "Did you put electricity on it?" This weird question told me that Detective Rosie Rodriguez somehow knew about the first murder attempt from 2 weeks earlier when I had put electricity on my bedroom doorknob, but the police were never called that night. I suspect that Rosie knows something about Matt Hyman too. I think it's also important to add that on December 20th, 2011, now this was 39 days before the murder attempt, about 10 days before separation, I was still with the ex-wife. The ex-wife called the police to my home, and this was the night that I was placed into a police car, which already had a baggie of marijuana laying in the seat, and told the police they better not be called back here again for this stuff. I took that to mean for repeated burglaries that I thought were connected to a prostitution ring. It's the reason I didn't call the police on the night I was shot, even when I had burglar alarms going off over and over. After they left that night, she told me, "We're creating a document trail on you." The ex-wife said that to me. This has made me suspect that some of these police were planning my murder a month in advance. Remember that she is lifelong friends with Rosie Rodriguez, as they went to elementary and junior high together. And what I didn't write here is that also means that Matt Lawhon, the previous owner, they chose for him to die. And that's called capital murder, and that's what I've long believed anyway. She also told me, "Danny said that we'll just take your home." I asked my brother Danny about saying this, and he denied knowing it. He denied saying it, and he denied knowing anything about the crimes against me here in Midland. He's also not spoken to me in several years. I can't see my brother trying to hurt me, so I've wondered if he has been threatened by people in this crime ring. Also, I included a video called Kansas City Chiefs Fan because it shows the cabinet for when the evidence shows that the shot came from, and a Kansas City ball cap that was obviously left by the people who covered that up when I was shot, the Trapdoor. Okay, I suspect this was done between the two police visits on 12912 and 2112. That's the two visits, and the only person seen in both sets of pictures, remember they tried to kill that camera and accidentally started it, was Rosie Rodriguez. Okay, Susan Magana, the sister of Mike Lawhon, told me over the phone they had another brother here in Midland named Brian Tennis who was a big Kansas City Chiefs fan. She just offered up that information after seeing my Facebook about finding that Kansas City ball cap. Brian said that Susan don't know what she's talking about, but did mention a confrontation between him and Mike right before Mike died. Mike's death certificate says he died at his mom's house, Susan Tennis, in Fort Worth, but the neighbor, Marilyn DeLuigi, told me twice he died here, which was confirmed by the second death notice from the Odessa American. Remember, Odessa American posts 2 death notices for Mike Lawhon. First one says Fort Worth, second one they changed it to say he died at his residence. Anyway, Brian might know something. On September 15, 2017, this stalker, unknown person, had the email address of Mark P. Jones at cheerful.com, sent me that attached email, which made it clear that he was a Kansas City Chiefs fan. He also said that he learned how to fake x-rays in medical school, which seems important since I've proven that my x-rays were faked at the hospital. I forwarded that email to law enforcement back in 2017, hoping they would track him down, but it was ignored. Okay, so three YouTube videos that I sent to Sheriff Kreiner: Motive for Murder, Matt Hyman, which is an older movie that I made telling the story I just read about how to get away with murder, which shows the proof of that I wasn't shot with my gun, and shows the room from where I was shot. Okay, and then the Kansas City Chiefs cap. Okay, and that's the story that I just went over because that's important. There's a Kansas City Chiefs cap, and so there's the video on the first the picture for the first video. Okay, my next comment: attached a copy of Matt Hyman's death certificate and a print screen from the conversation with his sister-in-law that told me he died at the same time. I had electricity on my doorknob by a surprise heart failure that nobody knew he had. Matt was only 33 years old. Electricity stops the heart, but oftentimes it can be restarted if EMS is called quickly enough. Okay, so here's the obituary. Here's Matt Hyman, 33 years old, Saturday, January 14th. He's a petroleum landman with Coyote, and then he goes to school, and he's also worked for Cotton, Bledsoe, Ty, and Dawson as attorney in the oil and gas section, and that is the city's attorney. Okay, and remember, my attorney, when I went to see her, she says, "There's not a lawyer in this town that's going to help you." And I'm like, why wouldn't a lawyer help me? Well, maybe because a lawyer died in my house. Okay, here's his sister-in-law that happened to be my nurse, so I was asking her a question, and she told me he died from a genetic heart defect that no one knew he had. Okay, I'm like, yeah, right. Was he messing with electricity that day? No, he wasn't. Do you remember the time of death? I'm trying to eliminate him as a suspect, but it's not eliminating him. It was at night. It was the same time he put electricity on the doorknob, and sitting there with his wife, and she's the only one to witness. He just died, 33 years old. And next, also attached was a print screen, a Facebook conversation with Brian Hillman and Chris Mertz, who were also oilfield landmen. They didn't want me asking a question, and was insinuated that I would get beaten up for doing it. Brian Hillman here, okay? Dude, you're barking up the wrong tree. I suggest you take this down immediately. Read the DM I just sent you. Okay, and then here's Maria. She's reading this. Says, "Are they always threatening like this, buddy?" And then here's Chris Mertz. This guy worked for my company. Remember, he reported up to Ken Slager that used to live across the street from my house, that took care of the booth at the oil show, right? Their commercial director. And Chris is here. "Buddy, you block everybody. I worked with you, etc." Calls me crazy in here somewhere. You got the balls to post your crazy ass shit, and you accept the consequences, so have answered like a face to face like a man. So this, here, as far as I'm concerned, here we're threatening a crippled crime victim, and the main reason they're doing it is because they don't want me asking questions, right? I mean, because as always, if I said Matt Hyman died here, then somebody come back and says, "You said that," but I never said that. I asked if did Matt Hyman die here? I suspect he did. That's a fact. That's an actual fact. I do suspect that, but I don't have the proof that happened. Okay, and then Brian Hillman, who's also a landman, was extremely lewd, threatened to sue me for asking questions. Come to find out, he married Matt's wife, Leslie, the only alleged witness to Matt's surprise heart failure. Okay, so here's the Brian Hillman, and this is my late husband's wife, Leslie Reed Hyman here. And so I wouldn't have known that if he told me that. But here's where it gets interesting here. He says, "You can see the story about his cause of death. It was arrhythmia. My wife started to push for different types of testing on high school athletes." There's a news story I'm sure you can find on CBS 7 from 3 or 4 years ago. We're going to go look at that here in a minute. I got another Facebook post about this CBS 7, because if it's on CBS 7, it must be a fact. I'm going to show you something here in a minute, okay? And I'm kind kind. I'm talking about the girl being murdered, trying to do best for the community, etc. And this guy is rude and hateful. He don't care about murdering little girls at wholesale parties. He says, I'm not interested in your rhetoric bullshit. I'm interested in you taking stuff down. It has nothing to do with what happened. The only threat you're going to receive will be legal, And so I said, well, let me ask you something. Where were you at on January 28, 2012? 2 weeks after, I don't know. Okay. And so, that's the question has been asked, because I was told a lot of people were here when I shot, if he had an alibi, and even if that was a motive for murder. Oh, yeah, we were breaking in Buddy's house to kill him, and then Matt got himself killed, so it's got to be Buddy's fault. What? You're breaking in my home to kill me? Anyways, I also mentioned the sheriff that before I moved here, Ken Slager, commercial director for my company, DCB Midstream, lived across the street from this home at 3803 Fair Circle. His group took care of our booth at the oil show, and all of our Landman worked on the commercial group. That would include Chris Mertz, that threatened me, who seemed to threaten me over asking questions about the first murder attempt. Since it's believed the $1 million underground home in the backyard was hosting oil show parties, then it makes sense that Ken may know something about that. After I survived the murder attempt, I was told that Ken was laid off by surprise and walked out the door. And I like Ken. I always like Ken, but I got a feeling he knows something. You just go to MidCAD, the Midland County Appraisal District, and you can look up any address you did. Dustin is my neighbor now. Lives across, nice guy, Dustin Kirkland, really nice guy. Lives across the street right now. Marilyn DeLuigi, okay, she sold that house in March 2017. She's the one that told me twice that Mike Lawhon died that, and she also said somebody else died here before Mike did, okay. And then here's Ken Slager at the bottom, and he sold the house in July 2006. That's a house directly across the street, and I didn't get here till 2008, until November 2008. Okay. Also sent this picture of what looks like a tunnel ditch had been cut going from my home over to the home that Ken Slager used to live in. This was the home that Marilyn DeLuigi lived in too, and she was the neighbor that told me twice that Michael Owen died in my home, and also said somebody else had died here before him. She mentioned that her son was real worried about what happened to me, so I suspected that maybe he had information. Okay, and so this is my cul-de-sac. My home is on this side over here, and what I was pointing out here, in the street, do you see it? It looks like a tunnel ditch cut right there, and going from my home over to that home. This, I think, was the day she was moving out. Marilyn was moving out, and that's 3803 Fair Circles where Ken Slager lived. Okay. Also mentioned in this email was the Kansas City ball cap that I found under the cabinet from where I shot. I believe it was left there by whoever covered up that when I was in the hospital. There isn't a lot of Kansas City Chiefs fan here, so this is a big clue. Evidence shows without a doubt this is where the shot came from, and I believe it's where Matt Hyman and his friends entered my home from 2 weeks earlier, and where MPD officers Davis, Dickey, Chatwell, Angel, and Hale came in a few minutes after I was ambushed shot from the same location. That's where I was shot from. And so under the cabinet from where I shot, and that's this cabinet missing a door, missing a shelf, and this kickboard wasn't there. This was the hidden trap door in that room, and I walked by and they pulled the trigger. Point blank range directly at artery with my phone lines cut. Okay. Susan Magana, the sister of the last homeowner, Michael Allen saw this picture, told me that they had another brother here named Brian Tennis, who was a big Kansas City Chiefs fan. She just offered that information up. I spoke with Brian, and he said that Susan didn't know what she was talking about, but he did mention a confrontation between them before Mike died. He also said his wife was living here around that time. So this is communication with Brian Tennis, right? And I'm talking, I'm telling him how the police on December 20th, or how the ex-wife, when the night the police were here on December 20th, said, we're creating a document trail on you, okay? Which would mean that they created a document trail on Mike Lawhon, okay? Capital murder, okay? And so anyways, here, that's nowhere the truth. So he's basically saying his sister doesn't know what she's talking. I'm sorry all of this has happened to you, but my brother was attending drug rehab forward, staying with his mother, 2 weeks relapse, overdose. Susan doesn't know what she's talking about. My brother choked his ex-wife with a rifle and then had to be talked down by me. That's what I was saying. That's where he just happened to mention that there was a confrontation between them, okay? Because based on the evidence found, I believe that Mike Lawhon was killed here and taken to Fort Worth, because of the dual death notices and because of what the neighbor told me, right? More than one person said he died in this house. Odessa American and the neighbor, okay? And so Brian Tennis may know something about that, right? Because there was a confrontation, okay? Also found Susan Tennis was the mother of Mike Lawhon and Brian Tennis, and her home was in Fort Worth. It's one of the places that said that Mike Lawhon died out. The other place was his home in Midland. Susan died in 2016, and a friend noticed she had a Kansas City Chiefs emblem on her obituary. She used to live in Midland and managed the private club for the billionaire oil man Clayton Williams, okay? And that's interesting because the companies that built these homes, Tabor Energy, their vice president was a guy named Aaron Geibel. Okay, and Aaron Geibel worked for Clayton Williams, and he died on the famous, what year was it? The famous, was it 1990 plane crash? 5 of billionaire Clayton Williams executives died in that plane crash while he was running for governor of Texas, and the guy was a vice president of the company that built my home. Okay, but so there's another connection back to Clayton Williams. That's no longer alive. He recently died. Okay. I think that law enforcement may also want to talk to Barbara Pickering, who is also related to Mike Lawhon. As you can see, she slandered my name, was extremely hateful. This suggested that she may also know something about the underground homes and multiple murders. I wonder if she was a Kansas City Chiefs fan, okay? And you need to get some help. Well, there's the first sign right there. We got somebody here. I'm the sister of Mike Lawhon, the daughter of Susan Tennis, And no, I meant psychiatric help, And, I find out that she knows something about these underground facilities, $1 million underground facilities hosting international show parties connected to multiple murders and slandering my name like that. Then, I think that might even be a accessory to capital attempted murder, because I sure don't like that. In 2017, this stalker sends me an email from Mark P. Jones at Cheerful, who mentions that he's a Kansas City Chiefs fan. He also says he learned to fake x-rays while in medical school, and I have proof that my x-rays were faked. I forwarded this email to law enforcement, hoping they would track down who sent this, but nothing more happened. This is the email, Mark P. Jones, cheerful.com. Here's the date. September 15th, 2017 to me, okay? And do you watch much of the Kansas City Chiefs' great football team? There's nothing like the Cowgirls of Dallas, Texas, okay? And so automatically I know he's a Kansas City Chiefs fan, and I found a Kansas City Chiefs cap under the cabinet from where I was shot. Obviously left when they poured concrete and covered that up while I was in the hospital. So when I was going to medical school, this guy's talking, going to medical school back in the early 70s after my time working overseas for the company during wartime, I was taught how to fake x-rays. Okay? And so that seems very important that on that date and that email that law enforcement wants to track that guy down and find out what he knows about these crimes here. That makes sense. Okay. And then the post I did above it, which is interesting, and this was called Excuse Making. Brian Hillman threatened to sue me, and desperate didn't stop me from asking questions about Matt. We already went over that, You see in the print screen that Brian makes a big point of CBS 7 doing a news story on arrhythmia and Matt's death. He said his wife, who happened to be the widow of Matt Hyman and the only alleged witness to Matt's surprise heart failure, started a program for testing on high school athletes. I suspected that after Matt died, the powers that be come up with an excuse to cover up what really happened to him. Keep in mind that this is the same CBS 7 News that has never told the public about a crime victim offering an award to identify police. The same ones who didn't tell the public that Sheriff Deputy Mike Nader was at my home a few minutes after I shot without being dispatched. The same ones who didn't tell the public about proof of doctors faking x-rays. The same ones that didn't tell the public there's almost a dozen people saying that 13-year-old murdered Haley Dunn was killed in Odessa. The same ones that haven't told the public that I reported somebody in my attic and then was shot with burglar alarms going on my attic, and now homeowners all over Midland, Odessa have reported somebody in the attic. The same ones ones who haven't told the public, sheriff candidate Joe Lozano was recorded as saying that the late Sheriff Gary Painter used to hang out in the underground homes here. The same ones who haven't told you that the Midland Police Department withheld a police report for 7 years that showed 5 police officers, Davis, Dickey, Chatwell, Angel, and Hale, were at or in my home, but when they were not seen arriving on the security camera. The same ones who didn't tell you that out of the 11 secret police identified 6 years later, 6 of them don't have their name on the report and 3 of those are dead. Some people have suggested that Sandra Simpson's murder, the wife of Chad Simpson, one of those secret police, could have been prevented if only news would have been reported about the secret police, since she was murdered by one of them. I could give you other examples, important fact-based stories that CBS and other news agencies has hidden from the public. So now we can see why I don't consider it a fact when I see a news story by CBS 7.
Diagnose it before it's too late. CBS 7's Felicia Bolton has her emotional story of prevention. Felicia?
Leslie Hyman says her husband was completely healthy, but within minutes he passed away of a heart problem they never knew he had. Leslie Hyman is living a new life after her 33-year-old husband, Matthew Hyman, passed away earlier this year of sudden cardiac death.
Really hard. Matt was very, very hands-on. Amazing daddy. When my daughter misses her dad, when my daughter tells me, I miss my daddy, and having to tell her that she wasn't going to get to see her dad again. He was my very best friend.
She says Matthew was healthy and had no signs of an illness, but within minutes he died on their bathroom floor of sudden cardiac death, an illness they never knew he had.
Just told me he wasn't feeling well. He felt a little sick to his stomach. And then he was gone. The autopsy report said it was an arrhythmia, an irregular heartbeat.
After Matthew died, she checked his medical history, and he was never tested for heart problems. Now she's warning people to get tested because it could save their life.
I guess I just want people to be aware that you can be walking around and have something going on with you, and just to be proactive with your own health and not wait for a doctor to run tests, not wait till you have a reason to do them, but just to do them to make sure you're okay.
Through help and support of her family and friends, she and her children are able to survive. She says they're living each day to make Matthew proud and sharing his story to keep others from losing a loved one. To see if you could suffer from
Obviously, that was made before she went and married the Matt's friend, Brian Hillman, that had threatened me. And so don't forget, minutes after I'm shot, 2 weeks later, I'm at the emergency room, and Detective Rosa Rodriguez is up there, and I'm telling her that I tie-wired my spare door shut because I recognized somebody had been inside my house, that I was under another home invasion. I've been reporting burglaries for 14 months. And then in that smart tone of voice, Detective Rosa Rodriguez says, "Did you put electricity on the doorknob or on the tie wire?" You know, and that's when I knew she knew about me putting electricity on the doorknob. Well, how could she know that since I didn't call the police? I'm thinking Matt died there. They were part of the cover-up. I got a feeling Rosie Rodriguez knows about that. Buddy Way, Midland, Texas.